My name is Julie Bashirs, and I've done my research on the ovulatory cycle effects on female homosexual attraction. So I chose this topic after reviewing a lot of research on heterosexual attraction and relationships, and felt that a good way to expand on this research would be to include the homosexual population so that we can get ideas about similarities and differences between heterosexual and homosexual attraction and relationships. I also think this is a really good time to start expanding into that population because of the more positive societal feedback that we're starting to see on variations in sexuality and sexual orientation. In my research on female homosexual attraction, I found in a study from 2010 that only 1 to 2% of women identify as lesbian and only 2 to 3% as bisexual, but a majority of women do report having experienced same-sex attraction or same-sex sexual fantasies in their life. In this study from 2016, it suggested that this could be because of sexual exploration, of fallout from previous heterosexual relationships, or a desire for more emotional connection or sexual satisfaction that these women weren't receiving in a heterosexual relationship. The following research is all based off of heterosexual-based studies. So the good gene sexual selection theory is a theory that suggests that women choose their mates based off of characteristics that suggest that they have good genetic makeup for survival, and that these characteristics and genetic traits are the ones that these women most desire to pass on to their offspring. Through these studies, there's been a lot of debate about what these characteristics might be, but the three biggest contenders are symmetry, masculinity, and physical attractiveness. In this 2014 meta-analysis, they state that men who have more symmetrical features do report more sexual partners, as well as having had sex earlier in their life than less symmetrical men, and that women do rate more symmetrical men as being more attractive than less symmetrical men. In terms of masculinity is one of the direct effectors of whether or not men are rated as attractive by women. So women do rate men more attractive who have more masculine faces, more masculine bodies, more masculine voices, and they've even found that women rate men more attractive who just have higher levels of testosterone in general. An important addition to the good gene sexual selection theory is the ovulatory shift hypothesis. This suggests that at times of peak or high fertility, the effects of the good gene sexual selection theory are actually intensified on women. So in this study from 2018, they find that women who are in relationships with men who may not possess these good gene characteristics were more likely to flirt with and or fantasize about other men, and that women who are in relationships with men who do possess these characteristics, while they don't report being more attracted to their partners, they do report initiating and having more sexual interactions with their partners during those times of high or peak fertility. In this study from 2007, there's actually a suggestion made that it should be the opposite, and that because women are more likely to conceive during this time, they would be more cautious about who they choose to mate with, not just based off of genetic material. But the opposite of this, or a counter to this, was the dual mating hypothesis in the same study about how women already have their partners that they perceive as being good providers, good parents, and good long-term mates. And during these times of high fertility, they would seek out mates that have better genetic makeup that they would like to pass down to their offspring. This is also supported in this study from 2018 and the study from Gainstead, Thornhill, and Garver about an increased desire for extra pair relations during times of peak fertility in women. Based off this data, I decided to expand on these past studies on heterosexual women by applying it to homosexual female attraction. So my question was, will homosexual females' preference for masculine or feminine traits in their partners be affected by their ovulatory cycle or by their level of fertility? And I hypothesized that homosexual females will show a preference for females with more masculine facial features when in a state of high fertility than females in low fertility will. This made my DV facial characteristic preferences, and my IVs are masculine and female facial features as well as high and low fertility. I also have a mixed subject design. All right, so my participants and measures. In my demographic questionnaire, I'm intentionally asking about sex, gender, and sexual orientation to be sure that the women who participate in the study do meet all of the criteria. I'll also be asking them about their birth control to determine whether they use a hormonal or a non-hormonal birth control, as that could affect the results of the study. And I'll also be asking them about their cycle length to determine whether they're in a state of high or low fertility when they participated in the study. I'll be gaining my participants using convenient sampling through SONA, social media, as well as local LGBT organizations. The participants in my study will also be taking the BEMS sexual inventory so that I can rule out any genetic or gender identity effects or gender expression effects on partner preference. And my stimulus for the study is 20 sets of female faces, 10 masculine and 10 feminine. And here are my procedures. Following approval from the IRB and the recruitment of my participants, I will provide every participant with the informed consent, making sure that they understand that their participation in the study is completely voluntary and they're free to opt out at any time just by exiting out of their browser, since all of this will be online. After everyone signs the informed consent, they will be exposed to the stimulus, which is 10 sets of 2 photos, one a masculine and one a feminine female face that they will be asked to choose between. Following that, all participants will fill out the demographics questionnaire and the BSRI, which will also be online. And once everybody is done, they will be thanked and receive SONA credit for their participation in the study. Some threats to the internal validity of my study would be statistical attrition from confounding variables that I can't control for. I am attempting to control for some of them by taking into account the effects of hormonal birth control as well as gender identity, gender expression, using the results from the BSRI. One that I can't control for is history or past experience with relationships or with partners. And some threats to the generalization of my study to the general population would be the age of my sample, as well as some regional cultural differences that may not affect the entire population. After receiving all data from all participants, the data will be divided into 2 groups based off of whether each participant was in high or low fertility during the time they participated. I will be using ANOVA to evaluate my data, to analyze my data, looking specifically at means and standard deviations for each groups to make sure that there is a statistical difference enough to prove that there was an effect on women's preferences for masculine or feminine facial features based off of their level of fertility. I anticipate to see similar results as the 2007 study done by Little, where they discovered that states of high fertility did, in fact, influence women's desires for more masculine characteristics in men, both physical and personality characteristics. Some strengths and weaknesses of my study. So my study is easily replicable and it is an experiment, so it can show cause and effect. But some of the limitations are in the fact that there's a lot of variation in sexual expression and sexual preferences that are hard to control for everything. and the more we control for those things, the less likely it is that the results of the study will be generalizable to the public. Some implications of my study. It could suggest maybe for what causes variations in our partner preferences and our attractions over time, as well as suggesting maybe some differences between heterosexual and homosexual attraction as well. Here are my references. I thank you so much for listening to my presentation. Again, my name is Julie Bashirs, and if you have any questions about my research, about my study, feel free to ask.